You are listening to Games from the Cellar, the board gaming podcast featuring authentic board gaming conversation. I'm Steven, your host, and tonight I was joined by John to play Dinosaur Table Battles. And here's Adrian to tell you about Dinosaur Table Battles.
Well, Dinosaur Table Battles, designed by Amabel Holland and illustrated by Wil Alambre, was first published by Hollandspiel in 2020. At the time of this recording, Dinosaur Table Battles has a 6.8 rating with 106 rankings on BoardGameGeek and a ranking of 9624. It is a two-player, light to medium complexity game that should play in about 30 minutes, so feel free to play 2 to 3 to even 4 times.
Thank you for joining us in the cellar as we go in depth with Dinosaur Table Battles. Alright, so, Table Battles, dinosaurs. What can you tell us about Table Battles, John?
Well, Table Battles came out a few years ago. It's from Hollandspiel, which is a very avant-garde American board game publisher that prints things more or less on demand. So their packaging is a little bit different, but their games are very, very interesting and very different from a lot of the other material that's coming out these days. So Table Battles in particular it has the appearance of a war game, but it's kind of not. So you are playing head-to-head against each other with two sides, and it does depict battles from history, so you get to pick which battle you're interested in.
Or dinosaurs. Or between dinosaurs.
Or dinosaurs. We'll get to the dinosaurs in a minute. But these first publishings were Renaissance era. There's an American Revolution battle, and there's a lot of battles in Europe, and then there was War of the Roses came out and some additional pieces. And the idea is that you have a set of cards on each side which represents a part of your army. And the way they lay out is you're actually you're mimicking what the actual battle was. So each army has a particular target, which was the people that was across from them when they did the original battle. Now, the dinosaurs, the game works in a very similar way, or at least apparently from reading the rules it does. We'll find out when we play. But it's a little more open because obviously there is no actual dinosaur battle that
there
it's
are no
reenacting.
Historical dinosaur battles.
Correct, at least nothing that was written down.
Well, that would be the historical part.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sure there were plenty of dinosaur battles.
I'm sure there were. And in this game, the way you pick your dinosaurs, there's actually a draft rule that allows you to select which dinosaurs you play. So obviously you're going to get a different setup every single time, and your choice of target is going to vary. And the way the rules are written, it appears that any dinosaur can attack any other dinosaur on the other side, and that becomes a part of your strategy. Mm-hmm. So it's fundamentally a dice rolling game. The dice load up on your cards, on your various dinosaurs, and those dice allow you to either use them to attack or use them to defend. And the real rub in the game, the thing that gives it its edge, is that you can get the initiative and you can hold it for one turn after another, potentially after another and another, as long as the dice keep working for you. Because when your opponent defends himself, he doesn't get to attack on his next turn. So as long as you can manage to pull off keeping an attack rally going, you can keep him from grabbing that initiative. But you tend to run out of juice when you're doing this. Mm-hmm. So the result is eventually your dice go dry, and then it's his turn. And he's built up during that time period, and then he starts coming back at you and tries to do the same thing. So that control of the initiative is key to the game.
So I want to touch back on it being a war game, but not being a war game. You kind of had mentioned that. I think just from looking at the rules, I get where people would think this is a war game. I mean, it's by Hollandspiel. Hollandspiel's known for war games, but we've covered games from other publishers that are typically war games that aren't war games. Mm-hmm. So on first blush, yes, I get where this looks like a war game, but diving into the rules, it really looks like this really masterfully put together dice allocation kind of thing where you're rolling the dice, but you're not rolling the dice directly to attack. Right. You're rolling the dice that essentially become your resources to make attacks based on where they go on what dinosaurs or, I guess, historical units. And then based on thresholds or, just using those dice is how you get to make your attacks. Is that
Yes, so
Kind of how it works.
it's the dice are about the allocation of resources more than the battle. There's no maneuver, there's no map, there's no getting behind somebody or that sort of thing, which you do in traditional war games. This is about powering up your various units, dinosaurs or armies, in order to take it to your opponent. So yes, it's head to head like in Magic or any other game. But at the same time, it's really about getting those dice rolls and using them, getting them onto the card so that they can do work
Yeah,
for you.
so not a war game, but a battling game.
Yeah, I like that, actually.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. It's a battling game.
Like a head-to-head battle game.
Yep.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to throw in there in the mix
It's
before we get started?
awfully pretty.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. This is some of the coolest dinosaur artwork I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And whoever did the art, I'll credit them later, did an amazing job. It's very evocative and just very colorful, and I'm really excited to get this one out.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Let's do it.
All right, let's go. A couple of years ago, Mary asked me to do a dinosaur version of our popular table battles game. Yeah, that's what this was. And I can't speak to the original table battles. I'll let John do that. But this was a pretty interesting play. I had a good time with this, even though I lost both games that we played.
But it was close. Both games were relatively close.
The first game was closer.
First game was very close, yeah. In fact, it went to the tiebreak, the second tiebreaker.
Second tiebreaker.
And the second one, I kind of just managed to get you into a corner where I could start banging through through your last dinosaur and get it done.
So it was. I mean, there are a lot of. I don't want to say there are a lot of moving parts, but there's a lot of little things that you have to keep track of. And the first game, I didn't really have my head completely wrapped around all the options, but I would say the second game, I definitely had a better grasp of the different things that were going on.
Yeah, and what remains is figuring out how the combinations are going to work best in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
Because in dinosaur battles, you have the ability for any dinosaur to attack any dinosaur. So that gives you more versatility. In the original table battles, you have a set of targets, and they're in order. In fact, I'm trying to remember if you can have multiples on the board at once or not. It seems to me for some battles you can. But in the original table battles, you essentially, any unit you have is attacking a particular unit on the other side, and it's named on the card. Mm-hmm. This is who you can go after. So your dice placement becomes the tougher decision as opposed to the attack decision. In dinosaur battles, it's about the attack decision. So when you're laying your dice out, it's a whole lot easier to say, well, best practices is this gets my defense up and I can continue my attack if I throw a die here. And then at that point, it's a matter of making a good decision how you attack the guy on the other side of the board. Mm-hmm. And it's a little more optimal strategy, work through all the combinations and figure out what works. With table battles, that's the traditional battles games, you start looking at a side because and the other difference is each unit has its own hit points. So in this game you've got a pool mm-hmm. that you're burning from. In that game, first of all, you win by capturing your opponent's units or routing them. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's you destroy them is more or less it. And so there's a strategic point where you can withdraw a unit because your unit gets down to 1 or 2 points left on it. You go, well, I don't want to hand it to them. So I'm going to pull that unit away. And you can withdraw that unit. And for some battles, there's units that replace it because they were reinforcements at the battle. And a new unit steps up, and now they're pressing their attack on that unit instead. So the way the battle played out in real life ends up being the way the battle plays out on the table because Amabel did a bit of research, apparently, and made sure that things kind of worked the way they were supposed to. And the result is that you start needing to do your dice placement in order to be strategically engaging the side of the battlefield that you want to go after. Mm-hmm. And, with a little bit of shuffling, when you start figuring out who's going against who, what you find out is you actually lay your troops out on the table left to right in the same order they were actually laid out in real life. So, I mean, it's kind of uncanny how that works. In dinosaur battles, it's more about the attacks because anybody can attack anybody. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of how your opponent manages to get dice laid down in order to either defend themselves or prepare for an attack. And you want to force those dice off of that attack spot.
Yeah, it was interesting how in order to go from defense to offense, you essentially had to create a hole for your opponent to attack you without any counters.
Yeah.
So it kind of, and I don't think I really internalized that until about halfway through our second game, because then, I was looking at who I had, because your first instinct is to always be blocking, because that's typically what you do in other games like this.
It seems like a nice survival sort of strategy to use, yeah.
And there is a certain amount of attrition that happens through blocking and being on defense, because even though I was on defense, I would say 80% of that second game, I still whittled you down to your last hit point.
Right, because I'm chewing it, because when you attack, you do self-damage.
Yeah,
often is the case.
There's often self-damage, and some of the counterattacks do damage as well.
Yep.
So there is this war of attrition type of game going on. It wasn't until about halfway through the second game that I realized, okay, if I let John punch through, if I set my cards up in a way that I can't counter his attack, then I can go on offense and actually do some damage. And right, I did that, but with the way his cards, with the dinosaurs that he had on the table, I was doing my damage and he couldn't block. So the initiative went right back to him. So it was interesting because I was able to really do massive damage to him and flip over some of his cards, but in the long run, the attrition just is what ate my guys up.
Chewed you up. And our second game ran significantly long. What we did was we played the demo setup and the instructions.
The introductory setup.
Played that to the end, and then spun it. We switched sides, which is real traditional with wargaming stuff, and I recommend that particularly for table battle, so you can get to see how each side plays as well. And then we switched sides, and we did it again. And like I said, the first side, it was very, very close. I won by the second tiebreaker. The second time, I won by a little bit more, but you're right. It was much more of a slog. It was a much more grinding battle, and we're sitting there taking 1 point off of each other each way. And as much of that was sort of self-inflicted as not. And there was a big patch in this second game where I was on defense, but was still doing okay because you were having to chew yourself up in order to get to me. And I had the Velociraptors, which were allowing me to take your hit points instead of
I think that's
burning.
what. If it hadn't been for the Velociraptor, I mean, this is the way his army was built. And, I can't say if you didn't have this, would have completely changed the game. But the fact that you were gaining the hit points that I was losing definitely worked out in your favor.
Yeah, kept me in the game from that point.
And perspective. I think, going forward, if we played by the drafting rules, I have a feeling that it would be very difficult to kind of pass over the Velociraptors for that reason.
And I imagine I would imagine there is a way to counter that. We just maybe haven't figured it out. Maybe it wasn't something that's obvious in the demo version of the recommended setup for a first game, but that's the kind of thing where you might want to look at. There might be a better way to attack the Velociraptors or somehow take them out of the picture.
I mean, they're rated a 3, so maybe they're not that great. But
and part of what you can do is you can force them to burn their dice on defense by attacking the other dinosaurs so that they have to block, and in that way keep that number down. But in this demonstration setup, I forget there's another dinosaur there where you get to essentially hand that dinosaur's dice over. So the Velociraptor is doing more or less 1 damage per die.
That was the Utah Raptor.
So there's a -1. So it's a number of dice on there, -1. So with the Utah Raptor, if you're handing 3 or 4 dice over to Velociraptor, you could be doing 3 or 4 points of damage, and you get all those chips on your side. So you're gaining hit points while your opponent is losing hit points, which of course is a double up. That's a real nice feature to make.
So they did a really cool thing by rating the overall strength of the abilities and I guess the breakpoints of the different dinosaurs. And I see that the Velociraptor is a 3, which leads me to believe that there are probably other dinosaurs that we didn't play with that are stronger and potentially counters to them. So, until we play with the rest of the dinosaurs, we can't really. I'm going to retract that sweeping statement saying that the Velociraptors are really good. I mean, they still could be, but yeah, there's a lot more game here that we didn't see and didn't get to experience. So
Right, and
I do look forward to that.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing we could bring this out in May, and I could see us playing this in the evening for 4 or 5 different setups.
Yeah, I mean, each game took us. I mean, the first game probably took us 20 minutes. I would say.
The second one was longer.
A little bit longer. With the rules read and the rules referencing, probably.
And we're not never in a
even-
hurry, Stephen. We like to sit back and play.
I mean, when it's the two of us, we start talking about everything, and sometimes we forget to take our turns because we're just not paying attention or we're enjoying our whiskey. It slowed us down a little bit. But I feel like with the grasp of the rules that we have now, we could probably knock out a game in 30 to 45 minutes easy. And then you flip the table. You don't flip the table. You don't flip the table. You can flip positions and do it again, and you've got yourself a pretty fun little hour and a half on your hands.
It's I hesitate to call it a war game. I mean it's a conflict game, but fundamentally it's a dice placement and a little bit of strategy game.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify this as a war game at all. It is attacky, sure, but there are plenty of games that are attacky, like Magic the Gathering's attacky, but you wouldn't call it.
It's not a war game.
It's not a war game.
It doesn't have those sorts of features.
The running mechanism here is how you allocate your dice to build attacks and to build the defensive maneuvers that you make, and then using the abilities on the dinosaurs in ways that are most advantageous.
So I'm going to take a moment. I never do this. I'm going to talk about the presentation, which generally I really just couldn't care less about. But there's actually some pretty cute things. We talked about the flavor of the art earlier on, and you guys can go on the website and you can see what the art looks like for Hollandspiel, which I recommend anyway. Just fair warning, you may want to buy more games because they really have some avant-garde stuff out there. You're going to be very surprised by what you see. But one of the features in the game is you flip over a card. Is a strategy you can use. Essentially, as a dinosaur is becoming more damaged, you can retire. Each dinosaur is represented by 2 or perhaps 3 cards, and you can turn over a piece. Well, the back of the card looks just like the front of the card, except it doesn't have the abilities on it. So when you flip it over, the 3 cards for the Velociraptor, the 3 cards for the Tyrannosaur, I know that one has 3. All right, has more or less the head, the body, and the tail. And when you flip over a piece, the back looks just like the front, and the dinosaur is represented across all 3 cards. So as the dinosaur is retired, all of the cards flip over. You still have that full Tyrannosaur, and you actually get the full, complete picture without all the instructions and art on it. So and there's just a couple of nice features. And I'm not sure if this one is available for print and play yet. I know Hollandspiel does everything print and play. They're behind right now because they have to catch up. They've been putting out a lot of games, a lot of really good games. And one of their challenges is because they are kind of a print-on-demand company, their stuff is available in the United States for reasonable prices.
This one was $35 plus $12 for shipping.
Yeah. Shipping around the world is tough because everything comes from America. That said, an awful lot of this stuff is available print and play. So you're going to want to get clear sleeves on both sides for this game. So get like penny sleeves, something thin. All right. You can print this out on cheap paper. It's essentially a bunch of cards, a rule book, which frankly you can just leave in PDF format, and some dice and some chips. And you can use M&Ms if you want to do that for your hit points. So this is a super cheap print and play. So if you're on a budget or you want to give a gift to somebody that likes games, this is the kind of thing where you could kind of do your little own homemade version of it, and it might be a nice little gift of love as opposed to something where you just blew a lot of money. And from that perspective, I think it puts everybody in the world available to play both Table Battles and this dinosaur versions of Table Battles for just a few bucks. I built my Table Battles. I have Table Battles, the original, and I have War of the Roses, and I think they were $12 on War Game Vault. And my print costs, I had some sleeves, and I printed to cheap paper, and that's all I needed. And I got sleeves in red and blue to match the card colors. And it's like I said, if you're on a budget, this is the kind of game you could have on the table for less than $20. And there's a whole lot of play in this for less than $20.
Yeah, and I would say, given the presentation, I mean, you're getting 12 dice, you're getting the hit point chips, and just, the cards are. These are good quality. I would say, if you're in the United States and can pay the $47 plus your local tax, I would go with that route as well. Yeah, it is print on demand, so you're not getting it, next day shipping.
Right.
But I think I got this in less than a week. Their print partner is really good. They communicated with me almost right away to let me know that they had gotten my order and let me know when it was coming out. And yeah, it showed up like 6 days later. I was surprised because they said expect it between 10 and 14.
And then it was there.
And it's this really nice presentation. I would, if you're not handy with scissors and, don't want the headache, paying the extra $20 to get it printed for you and shipped to your door is definitely worth taking a look at.
That's not a bad price either.
No. And they do Christmas sales, right?
Yep, there's a sale every Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason I mentioned the print and play is if you live in Indonesia, you're going to want to do this print and play.
Print and play.
And that certainly you can do.
And
those
I know
of us
they're
in
working,
North America, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, and I know they're working on some kind of European distribution. So, keep an eye out on the Hollandspiel website to see when that actually happens. And keep your fingers crossed because, the sooner the better, obviously. But, keep an eye on that.
Mm-hmm. So from a rules perspective, this is 4 sides of a piece of paper. A little bit of art, which is very nice and does the job. It's the kind of game that even starting from scratch, you're probably going to be up and running in maybe 20 minutes from start reading. What I recommend is lay down the cards and actually play a couple of turns, even if it's just you playing against yourself with the 2 sides. And some of the stuff in the rule book may seem a little out of the ordinary because the game does not have the same running gear as all the other stuff you've played that's like this. But the minute you've played a turn back and forth a couple of times, you go, oh, that's the secret sauce that makes this game different. And it's all about initiative, and it's all about taking control of the game and holding it and keeping your opponent from getting it back. You can only do that for so long. At some point, your luck's going to run out. And at that point, they're going to get to take charge and do the same back to you. So it's all about gaining and holding that initiative and seeing if you can drive your opponent down before he gets a chance to take it back from you.
Yeah. So how would you rate this based on the Board Game Geek scale?
We're using the Board Game Geek scale?
Yeah, the old standby, the BGG scale. It's 1 to 10. It asks you about things like if you think it's a good game and how often you would want to play it.
Right. Do you lose sleep if you don't get a chance to play it?
Is this the only game you ever want to play again?
Ever again in your life? Yeah, those sorts of things. This is just a fun little play. If it's 2 of you sitting at the table, just a great time. And it's the kind of thing you can just kind of punch out a little bit. Like after dinner, you can play this. This is a very, very nice 7. And considering what you're paying for it, whether you're printing it yourself or purchasing it, I think this is a great pickup.
Yeah. So, I went into this game thinking that it was going to be a 7, and I wasn't wrong. This game it's got charm all over it. Like I said, the dinosaurs have this really interesting and almost unique art style to them. The mechanisms are unique, and you look at the cards and you look at the rules and you kind of, in your mind, think that it's going to go one way, but Amabel surprises you and goes another way.
Yeah.
And it makes the game very interesting where it could have been very boring.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I get the feeling if we played different dinosaurs, new effects would come in.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The game is wired to do that so that you get a different play just by selecting a different set of critters to be on your side.
Yeah, and so the rule book suggests a starting setup. My assumption is that the powers on those dinosaurs are fairly straightforward and balanced with each other. There are, I don't know, maybe another 10 dinosaurs, and essentially what you do is you do a 2-player draft.
Yep.
Where you start with a hand of 5, you discard one that you don't want your opponent to have, and then you keep one, and then you pass. And you do that twice, and you'll end up with between 3 and 4 dinosaurs.
And I got to be honest, okay, so and this is going off in a crazy direction. Is this a game you could put together for playing 3 or 4 people in one game?
Honestly, I don't know.
I mean, the rules don't support it.
The
they
rules
don't
don't support it. I bet you could probably manage with 3 or 4 players.
Right, you could do like a 2-headed Etten kind of thing that they do with Magic.
And I think you could probably house rule some kind of team rules. Something like, you've got 2 people on one side of the table and 2 people on the other side, and when you attack, here's how I would house rule it.
Okay.
If me and you were on a team, and say Jeremy, because he loves dinosaurs, and Chris are on a team, if Jeremy attacks, if Jeremy declares one of my dinosaurs as the target of an attack, the block or the absorb have to come from your dinosaurs. So the defense comes from your teammates' dinosaurs.
Oh, I hadn't considered that. I just sort of considered, well, 2 things. One is every man for himself.
Well, I mean, free for all for sure.
Right, and it'd be relatively straightforward. I'm not sure how it would turn out. But then I was thinking teams is you would attack one of the 2 people on the other team. But the idea of defending from your teammates' dinosaurs. Now that is sort of interesting. I hadn't considered that.
Because I think the issue with a free for all is the way that initiative goes back and forth.
Right.
There could potentially be issues with one player never being able to. Essentially, one player could not run away, but one player could be in control and be on attack the entire game. Because if you've got 2 separate opponents, that's a good question. If you've got
because the initiative is such an important part of the way this game plays.
Because for instance, with our head-to-head game, I had to leave a hole in my defense to be able to take attack back.
Right. You almost hope for a soft attack.
Yeah. And so if you've got additional opponents, that hole has to get bigger and bigger, and you have to have 2 players to build a hole for for the attack to get moved. So I don't know if a battle royale or all man for themselves would work. I do think a team game could work.
Yeah, and if you're playing with kids, which giving the thematics, I could very easily see that happening. It could be something where one of you is playing the T-Rex, the other one is playing 2 other dinosaurs or whatever your split is, and you could just work as a team where you coach each other and it's you alternate taking turns. But what's curious is in the original table battles, each side has 2 factions to it. So you've got light blue and dark blue on one side, and you've got light red and dark red on the other. And it's still a 2-player game. It's 1 versus 1, but you have 2 different sets, and that directs some of how you do your attacking and defending. And I'm just curious to know, I wonder if you could split that out and turn this into a 4-player game. I'd be curious. I imagine the smart people of Hollandspiel at least gave that a thought. Given the thematics of this, it'd be great to be able to play this.
I'm sure they've run through all the scenarios, and they've, tested them and iterated on them and decided that they weren't exactly feasible or workable or
not good enough to make it part of the game.
And not within the spirit of the and not within the spirit of the game. So I mean, it's always fun to kind of what if.
Yeah, knock it around, see what you can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be curious.
So I really like this. I'm really excited to add it to rotation. This is one that I'll definitely be suggesting coming up. Any final thoughts on your end on Dinosaur Table Battles from Hollandspiel?
No, I think that's it. Hollandspiel's just got a lot of very interesting stuff. So this is one more feather in their cap as far as I'm concerned. It's an interesting little play. I'll be honest with you, I'm a real history buff. I think I like the original Table Battles a little more because it hits me on that level as well. We've discussed that with other games, with Wings of Glory and Wings for the Baron and things like that. But it's kind of hard to argue with a theme like dinosaurs because it's just sort of, it's kind of mom and apple pie sort of thing.
It's good fun. I do look forward to trying the historical Table Battles as well.
Will bring that up.
Yeah, I was hoping you would have brought it tonight so we could play them head to head and do a
compare and contrast.
A compare and contrast or Yeah, just a head-to-head battle with the two. But my dinosaurs versus your Massachusetts Fifth line, or
Right, exactly. We'll mix the two sets. The Maryland Old Line versus the T-Rex.
Oh, that would have been great. All right, great. So that was Dinosaur Table Battles. Check out Hollandspiel.
Yeah.
John and I thank you for joining us in conversation about Dinosaur Table Battles. You can join us in conversation by visiting our website, gamesfromthecellar.com, where you can find links to our social media and Discord server. We also have a blog and a guild on Board Game Geek. We look forward to hearing from you.